Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent full-service agency TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buckross Productions and Coupe Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to The Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander at Liv Sotheby's Realty, CU Brand Studios, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental for their continued support. In this episode, we join your favorite designer and host, Jay Ferracane, for an inspirational and thoughtful conversation with lifelong skateboarder, four-time founder, and recovered addict, Max Hofert. Max shares his journey into design through addiction and recovery, and how he chose channeling destruction into creation. This is one honest conversation about dedication, hard work, and commitment to what you believe in. So, settle in, top off your cup, and join us for a candid and caffeinated ride with the resilient Max Hofert. Let's go.
Thanks, Max. How you doing, man? Thank you for being here.
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
I'm going to dive in a little bit and probably make you uncomfortable just by introducing you in that awkward kind of way that we have to. But for those of you that don't know him yet, Max Hofert is a designer, founder, builder, and a bold thinker who's carved out his own way of doing things, both in business and in life. His story is part obsession, part recovery, and 100% the relentless pursuit of design. Max sees branding, UX, making, directing, founding, skateboarding, and sobriety all connected parts of his life. He's built identities, teams, products, and now a platform focused on addiction recovery. He runs a thriving studio, builds startups through Powerbomb. You make me feel like I'm not doing enough, man. And he advises companies focused on protecting creators in the age of AI. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. But first, I always like to give people a little bit of in on the work that we're about to witness. So we're going to kind of sit back and enjoy.
Turns gray. This is it, the darkest hour. Isn't it depressing how our minds create an atmosphere that won't happen here unless we make some new demands to grasp the future in our hands. You know I wish I could, but it's too late for senseless minds that love to hate. No matter what they think or do or say, everything turns gray.
Awesome work, dude.
Great job on the music.
Well, thank you for being here. I reached out to you a while ago about doing this show, and I think your response was, oh, you should meet Faye. Like, you totally deflected me. Do you remember doing this? Yeah. And so here, a nice move, by the way, on the deflection. You put us on hold, but here you're here now, and we're super stoked.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Well, I like to start at the beginning. I think there's something unique. I look at you and how long it's taken me to work on my career, and I've watched you really accelerate and move through to where you are today. And I know there's so much more, but I want to talk a little bit about your early creative journey. I think everyone always thinks it's some predetermined linear path, and it rarely is. CU, internships, human, launching your own thing, and looking back at all that, what stands out in the way that you chose to kind of get started?
Yeah, so I tend to bounce around a lot in this because there's a lot of different pieces. So going back to the beginning, since even the earliest days I remember, my dad was an artist. and a skateboarder. And so he went to art school. I'm from Michigan, Grand Rapids. He went to Kendall. It's always been around. He's a fine artist, but he also did graffiti and built all these crazy ass ramps in our yard and spray paint them. But so I've literally always been around it. And so I started skateboarding when I was 3. And I guess it would be good to touch on the addiction because I think
Well, we'll come to that. But it's interesting when you said you bounce around a lot, because I think that that's one of the things as a creative director, and I've looked at people's portfolios, one of the things I always pay attention to in designers past is like their kind of like timestamps. How long were you at certain places? And sometimes when I see people have been at a spot for a really long time, I'm like, you got comfortable or whatever that looks like. And I think if I take your skateboarding background and thinking about skating different spots, skating with different people, I think people with that background kind of take that into other parts of their life. Did that have a reason like why you were, I'm gonna go to this shop and I'm gonna kind of like skate with them for a little bit and I'm gonna go to this place? Is there any connection there or?
a little bit. I think more of like skateboarding is one of the weirdest, I guess you could call it a sport, because there's never ending possibilities. So it's like, okay, I tried 300 times and finally did this trick. Now what's the next spot? And
Yeah.
it's just like constant your entire life, which is great for my parents growing up because they could just throw me outside for 12 hours. But I think a lot of that is the obsession too of skateboarding. When I started skateboarding when I was 3, so 31 years now of skateboarding, and just being hyper obsessive. I have an addictive personality, and I think that early on, like before I even had a career, I knew I wanted to work for myself and not someone else. So I was kind of checking the experience boxes I needed along the way and learning
To work for yourself. Because you
Yeah.
said at some point, like, did you say somewhere along the way that you didn't intend to end up in design?
No, not at all. So I think we'll come back to this later, but I started drinking heavily when I was 12 and 13. And then by the time I was in 11th grade and 12th grade, I was like full blown alcoholic and did a lot of drugs. And so when I think I was 22, when I finally was able to get sober, I moved back down to Boulder from Vail. And my folks, I dropped out of college the first time because I was too fucked up to be there.
Yeah.
They offered to pay for college again when I had a little bit of sobriety under my belt. And
Yep.
so I got really excited about that. And it was kind of like an additional accountability thing for me. I knew it was really high stakes. So if I enrolled at CU here, I would have a lot at stake if I messed it up
Yeah.
again. So then it was like, all right, I'm going to go back to college. What do I study? And so I knew I wanted to do something creative, just given my past. And my sister went to ad school at CU, and then I had a few friends that were copywriters and art directors that were a little bit older, and they loved it. So I was like, fuck it. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it all started.
Was the intention in there? Because it's funny, because I've talked to undergrad students in particular, and you start trying to steer them like, hey, by the way, when you get out here, you have a job. Were you just thinking about it as like a filler for I'm going into creative, whatever that meant, but did you know there was a job on the other side of it? Was that an end goal?
I did, yeah. I was not really thinking about that at first, but I think like in the last 2 years, it became more apparent. And my buddy ended up going and working at Ogilvy, and I would always complain about how hard college is, and he would say, "Oh, just wait."
Yeah, I
And
think
then-
that's the big slap in the face. I remember, I think one of the amazing things about our design community here is that the people you can reach out to, we were talking about this when we were getting warmed up today, that you can have conversations with Todd and Lucian, or you can call up Steve Madison, and famous type designer, and you can have these discussions where you're like, let's go get a taco and talk about like, what's next for me? You told me something that they told you about, like, you were having this discussion with them about advertising or something. What did they tell you the takeaway was? Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. So I had amazing mentors. I give it all to them because they've just given me so many opportunities. And actually, I was in Todd and Lucian's studio one day when I was still working in advertising, and Todd said to me, "Don't you just want to make shit people like instead of trying to make people like shit?" Thanks, Todd. You changed
Yeah.
my career
I like
trajectory.
that. I like that.
And that it literally hit me like a wall then. And I was doing a lot of branding work freelance while I was an art director. And I was just loving that side of things, like packaging, art, UX, UI, and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so at that point, I decided that I'm going to go full on and try and get a job at a design studio.
That's great. I think it's like, the ability to like listen to people that are kind of like, it takes a lot to like pay attention to when people are trying to help you steer or make decisions. And I do think that's a little bit tied back to the skateboarding world of like when you start to find icons or things that you're really gravitating towards, whether it's terrain types, whether it's styles and that kind of stuff. I've always just thought, and it's funny because I was thinking about this. We talk about skateboarding a lot, or when I have when I have discussions with creative people, about 80% of the time, I was figuring you're going to push us up to like a 95%. Like, hey, it's just part of what we talk about. But your story is so much like richer than standing sideways, even though it's like, a big part of your footprint. Because you snowboarded too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about the connection between those two? Did you see them as one and the same, or is it like, no, they're super disparate?
Definitely connected, yeah. So I grew up in Michigan, and my friend's mom managed this tiny hole-in-the-wall ski area called Pando, and it was actually where Jake Burton had like rode, one of the first snurfers.
Oh, okay.
And so they called it like the birthplace of competitive snowboarding. They have this huge plaque on the wall. And so tow ropes, like all day laps, so rails all day. And so that is a huge kind of crossover into skateboarding and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And it doesn't fall off your feet. So you're like,
Right.
dude, like, let's do this. Like I wanted to make sure that we covered the skateboarding part because it's going to come back, but you've alluded to this already, so much of what makes you now, and two things that aren't often discussed in design circles are addiction and sobriety. And I think actually, the more we got closer to this talk, I started realizing like, creative people, high degree of responsibility, super obsessive. So it's kind of a formula for like going all in and really being consumed by it. Talk a little bit about like how addiction and recovery like shaped who you are as a designer and as a business leader. Like it had to have a major impact on the way that you like think about doing stuff now.
Yeah, I think like for me, the thread of my entire life and career is skateboarding. And it taught me determination on a level that is not human. Like I remember days filming for video parts, and I would be like 100 tries in, and my buddies would be like, the cops are here, like we're fucked, like you have to stop trying. And I would just be like going until
So you got arrested,
or your tickets or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that experience with skateboarding, and I think it's how I'm wired as a human. When I developed the substance abuse stuff, it was skateboarding that taught me no matter how many times you try it and fall, eventually you'll land it. Sounds cliche, but
I actually don't think people have the end part. I think a lot of people will just keep trying, but I don't know if there's the conscious leap to eventually you will make it. I don't know if people make that final part. I think people just like put the nose to the grindstone and they're like, well, this is my life. I'm just going to keep fucking trying,
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it can take a very long time.
Yeah.
And so that for me was addiction in a nutshell. I tried tons of times to get sober and couldn't. And then finally it worked. Just like skateboarding, eventually it'll work if you just keep going. And a lot of people don't have that mindset, I don't think. I don't know, because it's really hard. But skateboarders in general are just wired that way.
I think they also define failure different.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned, and I think this is maybe this is in the middle of at least advertising school, but you mentioned that when you were doing these filming parts, that there was a dedication or a commitment that was kind of almost the offset that led to sobriety. Talk a little bit about like that dedication, because like you were telling me about to the degree of music picks, that cut sucks, like you can't use that clip, like that kind of stuff, like
yeah. So definitely obsessed with all aspects of life. If I like something, there's no half trying it. It's like all in, all or nothing kind of thing. And filming video parts for anyone that skateboards is very grueling. Like the thing about addiction is it does not go away. You can't like therapy it out or something like that. You have to transfer that addictive energy into something that's not going to kill you or ruin your life.
Right.
And so for
or
me,
those around you too.
yeah, exactly. So for me, that unlock was everything on how I got sober, because when I lived in Vail in the mountains, I was so fucked up all the time. I did not even skateboard. And so I moved back down here, I started skateboarding again, and then that's when I started to obsess with that instead, and like really wanted to film a video part. And I had this community of people around me that weren't partying until 4 a.m. every day. They were filming for videos, and that's what we did every day. And so that was the support system I needed. I did AA for a little bit, but then I had like a weird sponsor that was giving me shit for going skateboarding, and I was like, all right, we're done.
But I think that's indicative of your path too, is that you probably did that moment of exposure. Is this working? And then you've had this like self-guidance thing. I think that's actually a lot of like self-motivated good creatives, if you ask me, have this often censor around like, I don't think this is ideal for me. And some people will get hung up in the, I'm moving away from that now, because someone might see that as failure even, right? Oh, I didn't survive or I didn't finish the whole project or program. And I think that that's totally fine. Of like, once you see the signal of like, I don't think this is for me, why not move on to something new?
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, so I never would have got the first 60 days without AA. It's not that's not a good way to do it, but the skateboarding was just like, what was it for me? And so just transferring that obsession into that. And then I started filming a video part. I worked on it for 2 years straight. And that gave me a goal, like an end goal. And for anyone that's not familiar, when in skateboarding, when you film a video part, it's like, for me, I'm not that good of a skateboarder. I just don't ever stop trying until I do it.
Yeah.
So there's people that are really consistent. That's not me.
I saw a funny meme that said, no one understands how hard it is to become extremely mid at skateboarding. Like, it's kind of funny because it's true, right? Like, you do 31 years. Like, how long have I been skateboarding? Like, it's crazy. And you're like, still not super good, man. Yeah. But there is that drive that when you do make it, or you just, the endless pursuit of it. And I think that's part of it too. It isn't necessarily the make all the time. It's the activity itself, you know?
Yeah.
And creative is like that.
The
a lot.
process.
Yeah. We talked about compartmentalization. I was joking with you of like, I'm trying out these, I'm terrible at it. Like, I'll be the guy that like, I leave one meeting and then I'm on the next phone call for another project, but I'm still processing the other one. And I've been trying to do this new thing where I call it the luxury space. And I'm like, I'm on this phone call for 45 minutes. I got 45 minutes committed to this specific thing. But when I heard you talk about how you kind of like, you transferred, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm doing this now. Compartmentalization is an important part, especially of somebody that works on so many different projects and things like that. You run 3 businesses, your studio, Powerbomb, Romp, which is the app that you built on your own. How are you compartmentalizing and like knowing, okay, I'm working on this now? Because I think it's connected to how you were like, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to do this now. But now you're in this new phase, which is almost more complex, if you will. How are you working on dividing yourself up over those things?
It's very, very challenging.
And it's fine. It's like sometimes you're not always successful at it too, right?
No, most of the time. For me, like the first few years of the branding studio, I realized that in 30 years or 20 years even, I'm not going to run a branding studio. I want to build something bigger, like a brand or a company, whatever. And so building so many people's businesses for them and with them gave me that experience. And then after a couple of years, I just started testing business ideas and see what stuck. And so it is really bad to stretch yourself across multiple things, but when you're trying to, like my studio is where all the revenue is generated. And so I use that into these other businesses. But I have to put all my focus into the revenue driving thing. I'm single provider for the family. And so there's a lot of pressure to not fuck that up.
Right.
So it's really like over 6 years of doing this. I started a CBD and CBG company for 3 years with a buddy of mine. Just trying lots of different stuff, and you learn that you have to just like put different pockets of your brain away during the day.
Right.
Because businesses have like 20 projects within them. And if you have 3 businesses, it's like
You're good. 60
there's
quick.
so
right?
much shit happening. And so it becomes an exercise of constant triage of like, okay, what's the highest value task I can do right now? And what can I either hire someone to do or outsource or whatever in that way. So
Yeah.
it's constantly just prioritizing.
I
shit.
think that prioritization thing is a very important part of it. Is like, hey, what is like for me? It's honestly like, what's the nearest fire? Like, what are we trying to like make sure we're not gonna burn this whole shit down because of? It is interesting that you said like, I'm curious. You were like, yeah, I don't know if it's great. You kind of implied this that it's not great for you to extend yourself. I like that. I think I had this discussion with another creative director friend of mine, and I'm like, I think humans we're much more expansive than we think we are. Like everyone's like, oh, you should get more sleep or you should take vitamins, whatever. And like sometimes I'm like, no, dude, you should just fucking run a marathon and not sleep and see what that does. Yeah. But and that's not good. That's bad advice. So don't take that. But the thing that I was thinking is a lot of times when I get stuck, and I'm fortunate to have multiple projects, when I get stuck on one, I found that if I go work on the other thing, my crazy brain will be like, oh, I fucking solved the other one because I got out of my own way.
Yeah.
Do you find any of that?
That's so crucial. You cannot just sit all day.
Yeah.
I say that, but it happens to me all the time. But when I bake in time to my calendar to go out on my bike or something like that during lunch, that's when the ideas start unlocking. It's not when you're at your desk or whatever. It's like my commute to and from work on my bike every day to my office is like where all of my ideas happen. I like pull over and write shit down all the time.
Yeah.
And so if I remove that thing, like I don't want to drive to work because of that.
Yeah.
So it's those times away from the desk where all the shit happens, honestly.
And you said something powerful in the lead up to this, and you kind of alluded to this too, but you're like, I don't do anything part way. I think that is a common theme with, people with obsessive or addictive personalities, AKA designers and creatives and all those kind of people. Has that mindset cost you anything along the way where you're like, shit, dude, that like took me down this path of like, my addiction, like, did you follow one idea too long, or did you put too much energy into a business that never made it? Like, has that mindset kind of had a negative effect where you're like, okay, I gotta check that thing?
Every day.
Really? Yeah.
Huh. Because it's like, okay, say we get a $50,000 project, and then you do the math and you're like, oh, but what if we had this illustrator? And then you figure out that illustrator is $7,000, whatever. And you're like, well, it's got to be really good. Let's do it. So that kind of thing has got me in trouble in the past. I'm better at it now, but it is a constant battle. Yeah.
It is interesting to think about that too, because I remember you mentioned this, like you are a designer yourself. Right now, you're primarily running teams. Like, how much like of your life is spent? Are you doing like actually like pixel to pixel like design right now, or?
Yeah, this year way more. So it's kind of funny. I spent the last 3 years of my studio trying to remove myself from the day to day.
Yep.
And about halfway through last year, we got a really cool opportunity with a big global client, and so now that work is very me oriented. Like it's me doing it. I'm the creative director managing some people on this team. And now this year it's really heavy on that particular opportunity for the whole year. And so now I'm like back in the work heavily, but we also have like Powerbomb. I have so many mentors that are like, dude, you're fucking overextending yourself. None of these are going to do well unless you focus. But for me, it's really, really hard, like I was saying, to split the time because I ultimately want to build like my addiction recovery app. But
and all of this will fund that or is funding that too.
Exactly. So then Powerbomb, for instance, it's a startup incubator where we do identity and website sprints for startups of bootstrap to Series A. And I was going to shut it down or like stop marketing it. And now it's like ramping. And so I brought on a partner for that business. And so it's just constantly trying to figure out how can I buy myself more time. But yeah, it's tough. I'm
I
doing a
do-
lot of work now.
I do think there's a kind of a newer model that we're starting to see of like, I feel like for a long time, at least Western culture has taught us, you got really good at this thing. Now go manage people who aren't good at this thing. And I think we're kind of like hitting an interesting middle ground that I'm meeting a lot of senior creatives and like very like senior, like executive level creative people that are like hands are in the work because there are tools that are accessible to them and they're not doing finished design or, you know, the 90th banner that goes out or whatever, but there's a degree of them really being familiar with the stuff that is making it.
Yeah.
And so I was curious about how that, you know, you were getting in there. I often joke I became a designer to design, and then you find yourself at a certain point in your career and you're like managing people that
Yeah.
do design. And I've seen that in your work, your taste level, often, you know, to that point of like, oh, it gets me in trouble. I'm going to go get the really good illustrator, but that's what makes the work
Exactly.
too. And I think that you have a
worth it.
commitment to it that's really respectable. It's easy to think of the damage that addiction can kind of leave behind, but any like expand a little bit on the like almost the superpower it can provide, like the benefits that come out of like, no, dude, I obsess over this stuff so much that, you know, family, everything, right? Like has some degree in that work. You want to talk a little bit about like taking the obsessive part and turning it into like a superpower?
Yeah. So
Or do you see it as a superpower? Maybe you don't. You're like, dude, it's like a thing I wish I could just put in a closet and like
No, I
hide it.
really do think it's a positive thing if you figure out the right things to channel it into, because it can be a slippery slope. Like,
Yeah.
if you get sober and then start gambling, like you're still fucked. So,
True.
yeah, I just kind of figured out like net positive things, like building businesses. That's what I love to do. It's just you are wearing so many hats. Something's always fucked up that you got to solve and figure it out. And so to me, that's what I love so much. And that's a good thing to be obsessed about. If you look at people like Steve Jobs or other famous entrepreneurs, they were very, very obsessed because you have to be
Yeah, completely.
to succeed.
I'm
so hard.
curious, as you've kind of learned to work with that energy, do you feel like you work against it or with it? Like, I know it's a subtlety, but like, are you like repelling it or are you using it as like a momentum builder? Or does it depend on the day too?
I don't think about it that often. I just like do it.
Yeah.
So,
I bet you that's just the obsessive like carryover though too,
But
because it's
y-
just,
if you ask my wife, she would tell you differently. So,
yeah, we're going to have her on next.
it can be a slippery slope, because if you're addicted to work, that's not healthy either. But have to figure out how to balance stuff.
Do you put up hard walls between the work? I had a creative partner that if we weren't in the studio, we didn't talk about work. He had the Allen Iverson. Has anyone ever heard the Allen Iverson? Are we talking about basketball? You know this interview?
I think so.
So he was being interviewed and they were asking him some questions and he didn't like where it was going. So he's like, are we talking about basketball right now? He just started yelling. And actually I was like, we were on a bike ride and I said, hey, you know what? I was thinking about that project. And he goes, we talking about work right now? Like he started getting mad at me and I'm like, oh, because I use my bike rides and things like that to process my work. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to exchange it. But in the construct of life-work balance, do you draw walls? Do you let them mingle? Like, how do you balance it?
I think the goal is to not have work-life balance for me, honestly. It's work. I think someone said work-life integration one time. But if I could be unemployed for the rest of my life, I would choose not to do so, because I love what I do. I love this shit. So
Yeah.
it's like what the businesses I'm building are part of who I am, and it's my life. So there doesn't need to be separation.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I go home, it's like phone in the drawer, hang out with my kids, be as present as possible, knowing that the world's burning
Yeah.
behind me.
True.
With everything. But I think of it more like that. Like, I don't want to retire. I want to do this shit as long as I can. So,
Yeah, I think I spent a period of my career too, like trying to wall off, and I felt that was more work than it was. And then now it's not like, I love turning my brain off and things like that, but I find that if I allow myself to work when I'm inspired, I'm going to go do that. And I get up from watching TV or whatever it is. I think that's I don't know who's selling us that idea right now that it should be separate, but I think it's integration too.
if your job sucks, you need that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
If you love what you do, I think it's a positive thing to kind of have boundaries, of course, but some interplay between the two.
Design is a very interesting trade that there is you can do it without loving it, but will you do it really well? And it's not like, I've met really good carpenters and really good electricians and stuff, and they don't love what they do at all. There might be a few, but like designers for the most part, if you're working on things that are halfway cool, like you're usually pretty like, that's fucking awesome, dude. Like that's not a true like a thing that happens in a lot of industries. So it's rad to hear you say that, it is who I am, because it really is. Like in some weird way, I was like I was telling somebody like building fence. When I'm building fence at my place, I'm like, it's a design project. It's a problem to solve, It's like kids too. I remember reading a book at some point that I'm like, there was like, with boys, there's really only two problems. Like solve those two problems. They're hungry or tired. And I'm like, oh, you solved that. We're on. But yeah, it's interesting. A little bit of like, I wanted to ask you kind of some things, and you've talked about mentors, and I have to believe you're kind of exchanging that to people around you. I know there's a lot of people in this room that really look up to you and what you're doing. If you could teach only one design skill to a new creative, like what would that be?
Purely design.
Purely design.
Typography. Yeah. I think it's getting more and more overlooked. I'm obsessed with typography over anything else. I've always went and got old type specimen books and just studied them like crazy and obsessed over type. And that can make or break a project. You can communicate 50 different things in 50 different ways just by using a different typeface. So I think it's the strongest piece of communication you can master.
When you're in your research of type and stuff like that, are you kind of looking at it's so many times you tell somebody, oh, that font was designed for mail and it was designed to be able to use at really small scales. You go work on a brand that does nanotechnology. There could be a connection there. Are you thinking about it in those kind of meta terms?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if it's for instance, we had a trucking company a while ago, and one of the typefaces was inspired by metal type and manufacturing. And so those stories that you can interweave in there definitely help.
Yeah.
A lot of times clients don't really care that much, but they appreciate the detail.
But I think that it does in some way, the job of the designer, if you ask me, is to always do something with reason, and it just kind of cements that too. I think type is one of my favorite design tools, simply because it's so inexhaustible. Literally, it's you can just keep using it over and over again and do it big or small or whatever, and it has a lot of
the amount
impact.
of money I have spent on typefaces.
How do you know when you found the right thing? Is it a gut feeling? Is it the client liked it? Or does it move around? How do you know when you found the right font for something?
Well, I think there's two pieces of that. In general, I'll have hundreds of typefaces, especially if you're doing a custom word mark. It'll be hundreds in there. That's where I spend the most time.
Yeah.
And then it clicks. It's oh, there it is. And you're looking at it as a system. So pairing it with a subheading and a body and whatever other elements might be in there, they all have to work together, which there's a ton of nuances to type pairing in itself. But it clicks. You just know right away, oh, there it is. And then, so that's part one. But part two is then translating that to the client and having them approve it.
Right. And then is there any man, we really wanted to use this, but it's where their product exists or where their brand functions that it's hard to implement? Do you ever have to make accommodations along that way?
So I see brands as very fluid, dynamic things. So if a typeface doesn't work in UI, if it's not accessible or something, there can be a display typeface for UI. And so the systems can extend in so many different ways.
But see, that's an interesting thing, and I think that's a very skateboarding look at it, because very often when designers look at design systems, they think of them as these extremely hardened, published rules. And a lot of times I'm looking at it as where's the starting point? Do you see it the same? I mean, with the flexibility you're kind of explaining, I'm curious how.
Yeah. So our goal when we hand off a brand guide, which are quickly becoming a little hard because nowadays brands change and move so quickly with industries and culture, they can't be stuck in these rigid PDFs as rules. And so when we hand off a brand guide to a team, it's like, here's the base. Now go build some cool shit with it.
Right.
That's the goal. It's not like, oh, you fucking combine that with this. Like, no, do not do that. It's like the team has to have some judgment and be able to be autonomous with it. And you're just giving them the pieces they need to build good stuff.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your kind of stance on AI. And you've taken a pretty public stance. We were joking that like Shoney gave you a like lifeline, check-in. He's like, hey, buddy. But you've taken a pretty like public anti-AI, anti-generative AI stance, right?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of not easy in the industry simply for the fact that go open any article, listen to any design podcast, and everyone's talking about AI. It comes up in our discussions here all the time. As someone who's been surrounded by people in my life that have made very conscious decisions to do this or not to do this kind of stuff, when I heard about your stance on AI, I kind of had this like thing of like, he made a choice, like I'm super stoked for Max. Like, I think that's awesome. I think people making big decisions and sticking to it these days is like remarkable, because how many politicians do we see that like say one thing and then 2 days later it's different, right? But like, talk a little bit about why you're choosing not to use AI in your practice right now.
Yeah, so I'll preface this with there's a lot of reasons that I'm going to touch on, but B, it is not easy to have this stance. When I have like mentors that have basically helped me get where I am today, multiple of them telling me like, dude, what the fuck are you thinking? And I've just never listened. I listen on all the other things, but for this, it's just a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And so the first would be, a lot of times when people hear anti-AI, they think, oh, you're like a Luddite, you're anti-innovation. It's not that at all. We build in tech all the time. We build software, we build all sorts of shit. And so it's not anti-innovation, it's a pro-ethic thing. And so if you look at generative AI, and I have a deep understanding for how these large language models work and the technology behind them, they are the world's largest pirated intellectual property database that was taken from the history of the world without consent or compensation.
By the people that created it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you remove that piracy out of the equation, the companies that are taking up 30% of our stock market today could not exist, literally. They're not even profitable right now, trying to run server costs without having to pay for people's life's work.
Yep.
So that's the first part of it. And I obviously have an art background. And so I feel like there's a few things in life that are worth fighting for at all costs, and creativity and self-expression and people's art is one of them. And that can be writing, it can be painting, it can be digital art. And so there's also a lot of people that compare it to things like the digital camera or the print press or Photoshop, the invention of those things. But Photoshop is like an absolutely incredible engineering feat. It's absolutely incredible innovation. And same with Figma. Like, they spent $5 million on engineering just to build the prototype. It's unheard of innovation. That stuff, the digital camera, did not require any stolen intellectual property to create. That's what makes those things novel. And so I would say that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is, I think there's a false narrative being pushed on everyone. And I can imagine now in college, it's a topic that has to be talked about and covered. And there's a huge narrative right now around adopt AI or die, or like get fucked without a job. And it's just like, that is the big tech narrative. And unfortunately, some people believe that that's true, and they go out and they push and just spread that narrative. And
because there's commerce behind it, right? 30% of the stock market has a fairly good chunk of momentum that's going to drive a lot of narrative too.
Exactly. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
It's completely not true. If you think about all the inventions and innovation up to today have been created by the human brain. And so we created AI.
Yeah.
It's like AI is a chatbot built on the world's intellectual property that uses probability to spit out the most likely outcome based on your prompt, right? That's just how the technology works. And people say it's a tool. It's not a tool, it's a service. You're paying OpenAI or Claude or whoever to render something and give it back to you.
Right.
It's like you wouldn't order DoorDash and say, oh yeah, I use this tool called DoorDash to help me be a better chef, and it just showed up at my house. It's like, it's no different than that. You place an order and hit enter and it feeds it to you. It cuts the process out, which I think is the other issue. It's teaching our whole lives we've been told it's all about the journey, not the outcome, the journey.
Right.
Now juniors are being told that just use this thing and blah, 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 and it's going to be the future, and you're cutting the process out. I know there's degrees of which you can incorporate AI to brainstorm or whatever. Not for me, but whatever people do with it. I just think that's not how unbelievable stuff is created. It's created with your imagination, your lived experiences, and when we teach people coming up that they should remove that and outsource it to this productivity thing, it's just really, really bad.
Well, I love that you said in the lead up to this, I believe in paying people, not platforms. Yeah. And like it is, you've hired some like incredible, like, I want this guy on identity, or I want this guy on type or illustration, those kinds of things. And I do think there is a very interesting thing that, I would believe it allows your studio to do. And, to your point of like, do people think you're not embracing innovation and things like that? I was kind of thinking about, I like your DoorDash analogy, and I was thinking about a design analogy. And if you look at like Vignelli and Associates, I think they use 6 fonts. Like in the era when they were doing that, 80s, 90s, there's a lot of digitized fonts. Or were they less successful because they made a choice to be like, no, we're going to focus on what we knew? And it's not one-to-one, but I was like, oh, there's been examples in history where people have bucked a trend or tradition, right? Like that's where we're headed with this. It has been really like, it was just interesting for me. It was like how to see where you were coming at it from. And to me, like at some point, I've even had times where I use AI in my kind of like brainstorming. I call it remove the blank page. But I remember I was like, one day I went and it was down. And I'm like, oh shit, we got to fire up the old, and there is a muscle memory kind of thing. Yeah, right. And I think there's a little bit of a blend of it all. And I was just really curious about like giving you all the opportunity to talk about it, because how has the response been to it? Like you've mentioned mentors have like, said, was it more of like, don't talk about it? Or is it more of like, where are you coming from in this? Or both?
People that know me on LinkedIn know that I'm just like a Gen AI troll to people that are like peddlers peddling this shit. And so like Shoni, you mentioned, called me up one day. I think I was like mowing my lawn or something, and I answered, and he's like, dude, you sound like the fucking Unabomber, man. You got to chill. And I just kind of laughed it off, man, because I'm like, I'm not going to not do that. Like there has to be pushback on this stuff. Yeah. Because it's just like we're democratizing creativity. It's like that right there, that pen, it democratizes creativity for anyone who picks it up and wants to put in the work to learn how to do something. It's like you can't just decide you want to be an NFL player one day and just like play Madden and that's, oh, I'm in the NFL. It's not how life works. It's like hard. It's supposed to be.
Design is hard.
You don't wake up as an amazing artist like Picasso. You work your entire life at it. So it's like, it's just false. Yeah, it teaches you that everything is supposed to be instant. And that's not
That's actually, I got an opportunity to speak to Paris's class yesterday, and most of the students in that, interview or whatever, we got the little presentation I got to do. I was so like, it did my heart good that there's all these kids that want to learn to be art directors. And I kind of half knew like, man, you guys got some shit to go through, but there was never a discussion around like what AI tools are you using. Like people were just curious about making, and that felt really good. So, all right, moving into our lightning round here. You ready for this?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a bunch of words, and then you're going to kind of give me, we're going to build on them. So first one is, in order, you're going to prioritize these for me. Research, strategy, design.
You just said them in order. Yep.
Do you always start research?
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody about the creative process and back to this idea of hardened systems. I was like, I remember thinking processes don't have to be rigid. I look at them as like an accordion now, but no matter what, research is so critical to like everything you do. So
Yeah, and it comes like research is to ground yourself in, okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What's happening in XYZ industry? And then you jump into strategy of like, how do we translate that to who this person is? And then it's like, okay, now we go back into research and we have to go further. And so like competitive analysis is where we spend a shitload of time in brand positioning. And so that is very in-depth research phase. So it kind of comes
it's a little back in
pockets. Yeah.
Yeah. This is funny. I've noticed people using this term more and more interchangeably when they talk about the people they're working with, customers or clients.
Depends which business.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's right. Yeah, I get it.
So studio, it's clients. With Powerbomb, that's startup incubator, that's productized. So we say customer because it's all predetermined packages. So that's where it shifts.
Yeah. Rapid prototype or slow build?
Rapid prototype for sure.
Adobe or Figma?
Figma. I run my whole business in Figma.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really get into products that are changing the way, at least I'm working, and it's kind of dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, so I was an early adopter for Figma, early adopter for Webflow, like 7+ years ago, and I've never looked back. The only thing I use Adobe for still is mockups and
Photo editing, probably.
Logo design. And so Affinity, though, I'm testing out now to hopefully ditch Adobe completely.
Interesting. Agency, in-house, or independent? What do you prefer?
Oh, independent.
Really?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's where you've been headed like the whole time.
Yeah. I could never. I'm unemployable, literally.
I know. I feel like I tell people that story too about myself. But you really couldn't. I look at my independence without having experienced either, and I think that's the thing I talk to a lot of people about when you're taking work. You talking about like I was like here for a year or 2 years or whatever it was. Those bounces. It took me a really long time to realize I didn't work at those places because I had a similar pattern. I wasn't working at places to figure out how I wanted to work. I was figuring out what I didn't want to do. Like, oh, I don't want to work like that guy, or I didn't like this process, but I wouldn't have had that ability to make those decisions.
So crucial. Yeah. I was older because I was fucked up my whole life up until I went back to college. So I was behind by quite a few years. And so I was the old guy at the old junior, I guess you could say. I was like 27 or something. But, and so that's why it was so quick. I think it was internship at TDA. I had 2 other gigs for a year each. And then I went off on my own, like right when the pandemic started. So
yeah, but I mean, there's so many ways to like get up to speed too. And with commitment, that's what changes it all too. Like you can get to 10,000 hours really fast, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just absorbing it all the time.
Yep.
Frontside rock and rolls or backside bonelesses?
Frontside rock, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
That's what I was hoping.
Totally.
Serifs or sans?
Depends. Yeah, I think each has a different job.
Yeah.
Really, really depends.
Is longboarding really skateboarding?
No.
Good. That was the fucking right answer, dude. It was the right answer. Sorry, longboarders. Make a logo or build a brand?
Brand all day. No such thing as a logo in isolation.
And we do ask the hard-hitting questions here. Best condiment?
Condiment? Oh, man. Ranch, probably?
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a condiment now?
I think
know. That's cool.
That's
I like
controversial.
That. I was hoping you weren't going to say that weird green relish thing.
Oh, ketchup's good too,
Yeah.
so that's safe.
All right, we got a couple of Instagram questions for you, and then we're going to turn this over to the crowd here. Curtis Dew, a.k.a. Curtis Don't Hurt Us, asks, he's interested in the balance between data and design. How do you use data to help inform your decisions or prove out the value of your creative approach? I think it's a little bit of your research stuff.
Yeah. I think it comes in waves, but the data is more to solidify reasoning for decisions, but ultimately I think taste is and like experience is one of the things that drives a lot of work. Obviously, strategy, like we won't do a single design project without extensive brand strategy. You have to have that for any design process. But I think a data is more of like a gut check. Are we headed in the right way? But data cannot be the thing. So there was a time period where it's all metrics a couple years ago, and that's just dying because we're building for humans, not metrics, and we're just changing all the time. So yeah, I think it's...
I love hearing that because it's funny because when you start thinking about like that world where I felt like that was the early version of AI, right? Like everyone was pushing on like, hey, you have to run all your creative through these testing platforms and things like that, and then you're gonna get response rates. And then I was like, oh God, I don't want to do that. So I'm kind of thankful that we're...
So my life now is a lot of that. And so it's more of like a gut check. I prefer qualitative data over that. So if we can sit and watch someone interact with a product behind a wall or something and how they react and what they say to it, that validates all of our thinking. And when people start saying the reasoning behind why you made certain decisions, it's like, oh shit, here we did it.
Yeah.
So I think that type of data is extremely valuable.
What is the what does it look like when you're like, because I've been on the other side of the window watching somebody interact with things I've made, and you're like, no, why are you fucking clicking on that? What do you like, and then you have to go back and rethink it. But what's your process when it doesn't go right?
Oh, we were wrong.
Are you ever wrong?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But it's also really hard because you have to be careful you have to be really targeted with who the people are and making sure that they are the target audience in very deep depth.
We talked about context.
It's like my whole problem with the MVP model is startups are dying so fast because they put out these MVPs and they'll have their aunt and uncle test it. They'll have just random fucking people that wouldn't even use the product. And then they just iterate based on that constantly, and then their money's gone. And so you have to be very selective with who you implement advice from.
Okay, old Bucky himself, Ryan Ross, AKA Buck Ross Productions, asks, what do you have to know about a client in order to effectively design for them, or how that might differ from what they usually tell you?
I think the problem at hand, which part of our job, sometimes people will know what the problem is when they come to us. Other times they could think they know it and then we uncover otherwise. But a lot of times it's like, okay, what is the problem? How are we going to solve it? And that's how you build a successful solution. Which is also another thing about generative AI. It's like when you get into six-figure projects, like a $300 website we built, at no point in that process is anyone asking us if we're going to use AI or not. It does not. No one's ever asked us that. I don't know if it's because of how I position myself, but it's like, I'm going to go on a tangent here just because I want this to be clear. It's like, if I hand over a deliverable to a client, let's just say it's $10,000, and you say, oh yeah, me and ChatGPT made this for you. At no point in time is that client ever going to say, oh, okay, should I pay you more than 10K then? It's like generative AI is on the absolute lowest of the value spectrum. It's like anyone can go on there and just start doing shit.
Right.
And so it's bringing the industry down. So
and I've heard actually executive leadership ask the question now too, can't we just do this in ChatGPT?
Yeah,
and I'm talking about like movie level production stuff. And I'm like, no, you're really like, you're reading the wrong things right now. Well, no, actually the continuity, I don't think allows you to do anything that's more than like a scene, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And who wants that as a job? Like what creative goes into 4 years of school to be like babysitting a chatbot all day? Like, no, do this. No, you fucked that up. Like change the color of the shirt. And it like takes their head off.
Yeah, and they give them four more fingers.
No one, I don't know anyone who wants to do that.
All right, last question for you. If you were to kind of like, if I was to ask young Max what is success to you? Is that different now?
Oh yeah.
What's success? Define it. What's it mean?
So I started, not to go off on another tangent, but
Do it. I love tangents.
I started drinking so early, and like in the last 5 years of my addiction, I was drinking like a half gallon of liquor a day. And so I didn't think about my future at all. From really young to by the time I got sober, I just didn't know. I didn't really care.
Yeah.
And so I was, it's become more clear. Like it took me 2 years from when I stopped doing drugs and drinking to actually be like sober in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
2
imagine
years.
it takes time to get out of your system and then start to figure out how you manage who you are without it all. Yeah.
So I knew I had to do something creative, and it's just become more clear and more clear as I put myself in different opportunities and try different things that, yeah, I just want to build shit until I'm dead.
So the space to build shit is like the sign of success for you. Like I'm making it because
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the ultimate dopamine hit running a business, because there's so many downs, but the ups they're really good. So
Yeah.
it's always something new.
that's dope. Well, thank you so much for being here. Like it's
Yeah,
been great, man. I
thank
really
you
appreciate
guys.
that.
Really appreciate it.